4:30, we're going to call the meeting to order. Can I ask everyone to bow their heads and please sign? And now we have the adoption of the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. The next, Lucas Swan and Nathaniel Pierce, Dalhousie University Electric Vehicle Report. Can I have someone move that they can come forward? Is there a seconder? All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Terry, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks everybody for this evening, and hopefully you had a chance to get the first-hand feel of what it's like to sit in a nice electric vehicle. They're noisy, I know. Couldn't get. Anyway, if they could get over that noise issue, maybe they could sell more of that. No, last year or so ago, we were approached by the program through the Department of Energy. Through a program called Nova Scotia Move to look at different forms of transportation and how we can improve not only the way we move people and bodies, but how effectively we could do it. And in some of the earlier dealings with Dalhousie University, I'd spoken to Lucas Swan about some of our aspirations about renewable energy, and then we met and decided it'd be a good project to pursue through the Nova Scotia Moves program. So that's when we applied and were successful in getting that. Our contribution was $5,000 towards the project, which was a good deal considering the type of effort that we put into this and all the hefty living that also went into that. So we did it through a series, and maybe Nathaniel will go into that, but you'll recall we had Brittany Carroll, which is a co-op student from Nova Scotia Community College. She was doing surveys for us. So there's an extensive research on Digby County driving patterns, types of vehicles, as well as consumption of GHGs that we're also consuming here in Digby County, just to give us a picture of where we are and where we could be if we introduce the electric vehicles into the mix. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Lucas Swan, and he can introduce Nathaniel in the presentation.
Super. Thank you all very much for inviting us here today. It's really fun to be here, and we arrived in an electric car today. Hopefully you had a chance to go out for a drive in it and see how spectacular a vehicle that is. It's perfectly silent. It has no vibrations. It accelerates like crazy because it has full torque available to you, and it charges off of electricity. And here in Digby, you're going to see very shortly that electricity is essentially renewable. So it represents renewable energy transportation, if you will. Terry's right. We started this project. When I think of it, it's rather large because we ran over the last year, and it's very exciting that you would seek to undertake a project like this and see how you can use renewable energy in your region for transportation. As you're going to see in the presentation, that's one of our big sticking points in Nova Scotia, and no one, very few to no one, has investigated to any great extent in Nova Scotia at this point with respect to how it would integrate with renewable energy and so on. So you've undertaken that study. We worked with your groups towards that and have established a whole brand new report and presentation here that I think determines a whole lot of new findings for Nova Scotia. So you're leading the way right now on electrified transportation, and you're going to see those results this evening. Hopefully you'll find them intriguing, but those results are obviously important to you as a region, but they're important even in a broader context to the province. So Department of Energy is interested in these results. Nova Scotia Power is interested in these results, and other municipalities that are similar in size, scale, and scope to Digby are also interested in these results. This work was funded principally by Department of Energy. Julia Sable there worked on that. I'm very pleased to have some representatives from Nova Scotia Power, Jason Ledbetter here with me today, and David Swan, who brought his Tesla to drive you around. I greatly appreciate their work. Terry put a lot of effort into this as we went along too, and we did in fact survey people from Digby and the regional municipality here, which was important to us. We evaluated a whole lot of vehicles, and we tried to present those to you, and we will tonight, that they're available. And We had various groups, Management Without Borders group worked on this at Dalhousie, Nat worked on this, I worked on this, and we had some other people running around getting numbers for us as well. Tonight what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to introduce you to those electric vehicles. We're going to tell you why they are much better, both for Digby and for the environment, from an economic and a greenhouse gas emission perspective, for you than a conventional gasoline or diesel vehicle. We're going to also tell you what the benefits and detriments of them are, and then we're going to end by relating it to your renewable energy resource that you have here. It's a fantastic wind and tidal resource that we hope you're going to further develop, and we're going to tell you how that EVs, electric vehicles, will play a role in that as well. So I'm very pleased to introduce Nathaniel Puri. Dr. Puri is going to speak to you. He was the lead on this work and take you through his findings tonight. I hope you'll give him a good audience, because he's going to be working behind and he's got lots of great stuff to present to you. And we'll wrap it up and be able to take your questions afterwards. And I hope that you have questions about practically how do these vehicles work, what kind of potential impacts they could have on your region, and so on. So, Dr. Puri, would you please?
Thank you very much. You folks want to reconfigure somehow? Spare a strained neck. That's not a result anybody's hoping for. So thank you for that great introduction, Dr. Swan. I will begin the presentation. We're looking at vehicle transportation electrification, and the use of local renewables. So, Dr. Swan basically gave a great outline of the table of contents, talking about energy, vehicles, the survey, what we found in the survey, and how the local renewables and the transportation would actually work together. And at the end, I've got some conclusions and some recommendations for a plan to move forward. Here's a picture of another Tesla charging up at the town of Digby Town Hall there. It's from early this summer.
That made the paper, I think. Was the first one?
I think it may have.
Yeah.
All right, so I've got an awful lot of slides. We might have gone a little bit overboard on slides, so forgive me if I run through too quickly. If you need to stop me, just sing out. I'm happy to go into anything in more detail. To begin, energy, transportation. We use a lot of the total energy we use goes into transportation. This is provincial data. So you're looking at about a third of all the energy. That's a lot. We have a energy plan as a province on a provincial level, but it doesn't really address transportation. Should it? Probably. How does transportation operate now? Well, pretty much. We buy oil, we put it in our cars, we burn it up, and then we go buy more. So what does that mean in terms of a flow of money and of energy? Oil energy flows in, money flows out. With the shuttering of the Imperial Oil Refinery in Burnside, near Dartmouth, that was the last of the sort of value chain within Nova Scotia that we had that is now shuttered. So now everything we buy is really no added value in Nova Scotia. In contrast to that, as I'm sure you guys know, as you have a view of this wonderful wind farm that, as far as I know, is the best performing wind farm in the province, you have a phenomenal renewable energy resource in this area. What you see here in the middle picture is the average wind speed. This was some mapping done at the University of New Brunswick. And these wind speeds of 8.5, 9 meters per second, that is phenomenal. That would make a Texan blush. And Texas has lots of wind farms. In addition, not as established a technology, but of great interest in Nova Scotia is tidal flow energy. I'm sure you all know there are colossal currents streaming all around here. This is a Petit Passage with average water speeds. I'm sure you can't read this. This is very small. I apologize. Of 2 meters per second. Time average water velocity, which is an immense resource, similarly. So, that leads to the question, can we take renewable energy and use it to power our cars? Well, the answer to that, obviously, is electric vehicles. So let's talk about electric vehicles. They are here. They're real. They're on the market. They're in showrooms. My boss, Dr. Swan, has a Nissan Leaf. He drives it to work every day. He lives a little bit out of town. His commute is, 30 kilometers? 50 kilometers? So back and forth to work, no problem at all year long. Summer, winter, the vehicle outside, sort of the halo car for the industry, I think we could argue. The Tesla Model S. We drove up here from Halifax. We could have made it on one charge, but we stopped along the way to look at the chargers that are in place in the province. They're pretty expensive. The Leaf is also pretty expensive. We'll talk about the value proposition in a little bit. These all come with 8-year battery warranties, so this is not some fly-by-night technology that's going to leave you hanging. In terms of greater range ability, if you need to go further than one charge, if you're really concerned about stopping to charge, you can get a plug-in hybrid. So that's a vehicle that has a battery and gas. When you are driving a short distance, when you're driving around town, you can drive on electricity, which is obviously local, it's inexpensive, it's cleaner. And then if you have further to go, it has a gas engine that kicks in and powers you for the rest of the distance, like a normal hybrid or like a normal conventional vehicle. A couple of examples that are in showrooms today. Chevy Volt goes about 60 kilometers on its battery. The Ford C-Max goes less, 32 kilometers on its battery. Those are just a couple of examples. There are a lot of others. The report, which I assume has been circulated, I hope you all had a chance to glance over, mentions a whole bunch of others. So beyond conventional passenger vehicles, there are motorcycles on the market, there are light trucks on the market. Here we see some vans and some pickup trucks. There are some heavy vehicles on the market. There are buses on the market. Buses, in my opinion, that's the killer application, right? A bus stops every few blocks anyway. You're never going high speeds. All that stopping and starting, that is the sweet spot for electric drive. You get that regen braking that pulls the energy back into the battery. Anyway, these are the slides that we said, go really fast. We'll just run right through these. So, electric vehicles, you need to charge. You can't just run down to the gas station and fuel up. 90 or 95% or 100% of the time, you're going to be charging in your garage, in your driveway overnight. You just come home, plug it in. The next morning it's fully charged. You've got your 100 or 300 kilometers of range in the morning. You don't have to worry about it. There is public charging in Nova Scotia. Almost all of it is free, freely accessible. These are two examples. Where is this one? This one is Lunenburg?
Just outside Lunenburg. That's Bridgewater.
Bridgewater?
Yep.
Here's one in Bridgewater. This is what you can think of as regular charging. It's fairly slow. You're charging at about 40 kilometers of range per hour, or possibly with the potential, if certain conditions are met, up to about 100 kilometers of range added per hour. Then there's DC fast charging. There's one example in the province. That's up in, outside of Truro at the Power Center. These things have the potential to deliver range into a battery at about 400 kilometers of range per hour of charging. And again, it all depends on the vehicle having the capacity and the system having the capacity, and there are variations. So they're not all necessarily running at that full rate, but 200 kilometers of range per hour is common. And then taking a broader picture of this charging infrastructure, what do we got? Well, in the U.S. Northeast, these two pictures are at the same spatial scale. The green arrows are what I was talking about, the slower rate charging. So you're 40 kilometers of range per hour, convenience charging. If you stop here, for instance, if I come here and I give a presentation for an hour and I plug in, then I've got 40 kilometers more range, and that's probably enough to get me back home, or what have you, or if you go shopping or go to a movie. And the orange is the faster chargers that are perhaps better suited for if you're trying to do a road trip and you don't want to stop. Maybe you just want to stop for a coffee and be ready to go again. 20 minutes, an hour. So here's the U.S. Northeast, Boston to Portland, Maine. You can see a very dense, well-developed network. Here in Nova Scotia, much less dense, but I would point out, dense enough. None of the gaps between charging opportunities is more than about 60 kilometers. So any of the electric vehicles on the market can bridge those gaps, and you can make it if you need to. We did not take the Leaf up here because it's a bit of a project to go long distance in the shorter range vehicles, but it can be done. The infrastructure is around. Okay, so back to the big question. We can take electricity that we're generating locally. There's a picture of Gulliver's Cove. I'm sure you're all reasonably familiar with it. And water charging through Peak Passage. Charge up our cars, drive our cars. So, advantages and disadvantages, we've covered some of these already, in essence. There are advantages and disadvantages both from the, excuse me, the user point of view and from the society's point of view. Excuse me. As an operator, electric cars, if you got a chance to ride them, they're quiet, they're smooth, they're powerful. They're the sort of things, the hallmarks of a luxury vehicle. Quiet and powerful and smooth, right? You never have to go to the gas station, or very infrequently, because it's always ready for you in the morning. Very low operating cost. We can talk about the price of electricity. A lot of Nova Scotians think it's high, but compared to the price of gas, it's very, very low. Reduced maintenance. There's fewer moving parts. An electric motor. I've got a 30-year-old vacuum cleaner. It's never had an oil change. Disadvantages. There certainly are disadvantages. In the short term, at least, there is a high upfront cost for electric vehicles. Limited public charging, more being built all the time, and limited number of vehicles on the market. In the longer term, there's always going to be this range issue. You're never going to be charging as fast as, in effect, you charge up when you put gasoline into a car. That's an enormous flow of energy to a car. You're never going to match that with electricity. So it's never going to quite meet that same level of travel. And by and large, you need a dedicated off-street parking location where you live, so you can plug your car in at night and have it charged in the morning. On the societal level, we reduce our emissions of CO2, reduce our criteria pollutants, the things that cause asthma and heart disease and so forth. In Nova Scotia's context, as a fuel importer, we reduce our fossil fuel imports. We have a benefit to the renewable energy industry. And societally, the disadvantage is that as of right now, there's basically no Canadian manufacturing content. Although there are Canadian battery manufacturers, they are not currently in contract with any automotive companies.
Could I just make a point? That
Yes.
Tesla you drove in, all the suspension was built in.
Oh, I'm wrong.
Yeah, Magna supplied it. I knew you didn't know that.
I did not know that.
I wanted to correct that.
Thank you. Yeah, Magna was also working with Ford
Yeah.
on their Transit Connect, but I know that petered out. So, little Canadian content, but some. I cover my bases. We're good. So, the economic proposition from the point of view of the owner. There's a high upfront cost. If you look at the Nissan Leaf or other of the more conventional vehicles, there's a price premium. We pulled a number trying to do an apples to apples comparison, which is hard because no two vehicles are exactly identical. But $12,000 is a price premium. I'm pretty confident that price premium will drop over time as manufacturing infrastructure ramps up, as capital costs are amortized and so forth. And then operational savings, they use about a quarter as much energy to move. The cost of that energy is about a quarter as much per kilometer driven. And in a 20,000 kilometer per year, which is about average, you're saving about $1,500 a year in energy costs. Now that's just energy costs. We did all of our things on the basis only of energy, all the analysis that we put in the report. There is also presumably a maintenance cost savings, as I mentioned, but we haven't included that, just for simplicity.
Is that price premium based on gasoline or diesel? Because diesel would be a premium over gasoline, so that's really not even like compared to a diesel, that's less than that, right?
Correct. This is based on a gasoline comparison. And again, the numbers aren't going to be precise because everything's always in flux, and whether you're comparing this car in this configuration versus that configuration and so forth. But this is ballpark. You get an 8-year payback. You have an 8-year warranty. The car is going to probably last more than just the day of the warranty and then fall apart. So you get your payback. The value proposition is real. Greenhouse gas emissions. You may have heard of the long tailpipe argument. The long tailpipe argument is basically bunk. It's basically done by people who say it without having done the math, done the analysis. If we look at CO2 emissions, CO2 being the primary driver of climate change, a Nissan Versa today, based on standard fuel economy numbers, in an average year, and this is a year covering 20,000 kilometers, we're emitting a little bit over 3,500 kilograms of CO2 in that vehicle. A Nissan Leaf, again using the same standardized energy consumption data, again covering 20,000 kilometers a year, will emit just under 3,000 kilograms of CO2 per year. And there's legislation in place, province-wide, to increase the use of renewables, to decrease our to decrease our absolute CO2 emissions in the provincial energy sector, and that will result in a 50% reduction from our current values of a gasoline vehicle. By 2020, meeting those targets, we're only going to be emitting slightly less than 2,000 kilograms of CO2 per year. It's 40% renewables by 2020. We assumed also the fraction of natural gas would hold steady, and most of the losses would be taken from coal, which is a very dirty fuel. Survey results, yes. So Lucas mentioned the survey. We talked to 100 households and almost 50 businesses. To get a sense, what we wanted to find out was how many vehicles there are per household, whether people have different driving patterns, so when the vehicles are in use, how much energy they consume, and when they would be returning home. If they, hypothetically speaking, if they were electric vehicles, when would they plug in, how much energy would they consume? So, how many vehicles per house? I'm going to skip this one just for the minute because I'm probably running over already. Distances driven, business vehicles. There are lots of business vehicles that are driven fairly short distances. This is what you'd like to find. This is what you'd like to see, right? You have where you work, and you have a certain service territory. You don't need to drive 400 kilometers. Some people do, but lots of businesses don't. And similarly in houses, houses that have more than one vehicle, second vehicles, third vehicles, by and large, aren't driven that far. Primary vehicles in the house are often driven great distances, but second vehicles, third vehicles are often not driven great distances. Also in the survey, we asked survey respondents about their opinions and about their attitudes towards renewable energy, towards electric vehicles, and so forth. This is the responses to people's interest in electric vehicles. As you can see, there's a great deal of interest, lower operating costs, everybody likes that, especially reduced environmental impact. Was almost 60% of respondents said that they were very interested in reduced environmental impacts of electric vehicles. By and large, you couldn't, I mean, as people who think and work in renewable energy and electric vehicles, like the two of us, we couldn't have hoped for more enthusiasm from the respondents. Similarly, in electric vehicle policy, we proposed to respondents several different policies to gauge their levels of interest. Public destination charging. We were talking about public charging infrastructure before. Is surprisingly fairly little interest. There was a great deal of interest in purchase incentives and lower electric rates for nighttime charging. So money-saving mechanisms. Let's go over that one. Okay, so now the big question, probably on a lot of people's minds, is if you try to pursue this idea, of using local renewable energy to power your transportation, what's it going to do to the grid? Is it going to cause mayhem and crash the grid? So we were very fortunate. We have a very great working relationship with Nova Scotia Power. We got some great data. Don't worry about what all these things are. These are all our little points of data. But here's a little detail of the transmission and distribution system in the Digby area. So there's a main trunk line that runs up and down the valley. There's a line that runs in here to a couple of hydro plants, smaller hydro plants. all of the power, plus or minus, the vast majority of the power delivered to homes and businesses in the municipality of Digby comes from Conway Substation, which is located right there. So you get transmission. Transmission in there, it's down to distribution level, and spreads it out around the municipality. And we have lots of really great data to see what's going on. So, what did we do with that data? Well, the first thing is, how does the production of wind energy correspond to the loads for the demand for electricity? This can be answered in two ways. One is if you look annually, the demand for electricity, when it's cold and when it's dark, is higher. So you have high average load, is seen in green, and right on the right-hand axis. High loads in the winter, lower loads in the summer. Conveniently, the production of wind, the average wind speeds, follow a very similar trend. There's a lot of wind in the winter, and somewhat less in the summer. So on an annual basis, the energy generated by wind is a brilliant match for the consumption of electricity in the Digby area. On a daily analysis, it's unfortunately not quite so rosy. Again, load on the right. Here's a profile of what the load in the city looks like between, say, 7 and approaching midnight, but 10 at night, things come on, businesses are open, people's lights are on, and then at night there's a big dip in load. The average wind output, unfortunately, dips down during the middle of the day. So there's a bit of a mismatch, but it's only a mismatch by a couple of hours. I mean, you're talking about 12 to midnight, 12 hours. It's a more manageable problem than the problem would be if it were the annual analysis mismatching. So to figure out the interaction between the vehicles and the loads, the existing loads, we envisioned 3 different charging strategies, 3 different scenarios of how people might use their electric vehicles. The simplest scenario, simple charging, is, if you will, the cell phone model. You come home, you plug it in, it charges till it's full. So it charges as soon as vehicles are returned to the driveway, and we had a list of when everybody had all their vehicles returning home from our surveys, and how much energy they would consume. The second more complicated scenario is a time of use charging signal. This signal already exists. Nova Scotia Power has time of use rates that are based on if you have thermal energy storage units, you can charge them overnight for a low rate and then use the stored energy during the day and avoid higher rates. So there are 3 different tiers of electricity prices, and people respond according to those tiers. And we envision that the same could apply to people charging their electric vehicles. The most complicated, or the most sophisticated response would be a real-time charging load based on the grid power. I'm just going to back up 1 slide and 2 slides and say, right now, the limitation on building out more renewable energies on Digby Neck, or in this area generally, is the export capacity of this line. So right now, when the wind is high and the load is low, this line is basically pushing out as much electricity as it can handle. So if you added more renewable energy, you'd be at risk of overloading that line. So what we want to do, and the scenario that we try to address most directly with the smart charging algorithm, is when the load on that line is high, that's when you command the vehicles to charge. So you're adding load to protect the infrastructure and to facilitate greater renewable penetration. So, what does this do to the town's load? We pull a number out of a hat and said 10% of vehicles being electric. And I should say before going on, that 10% of vehicles being electric, that's a medium to long-term, very ambitious goal. That would be a lot of vehicles. But we wanted to have a number that gave a scale where the results were meaningful. So 10% of vehicles charging on our three charging algorithms. If it's simple charging, where you come in and start charging immediately, so here's a midnight, here's a noon, and here's a midnight. You see in the afternoon, charging load starts to add to the town's load. So there's the town's load, goes up and down. The charging load, which is the mustard color, adds to that in the afternoon each day. If you had a time of day rate, where suddenly the rates dropped at 11 p.m., when the rates drop, everybody starts charging. So the blue line, the cyan line, you see a spike in load right when the rates drop, right around midnight, 11 p.m. or midnight. So you see a spike in load at those times each day. And with the smart charging, the load looks a little bit arbitrary. It'll make more sense in the next slide. But what I want to point out specifically is that with simple charging, the charging that people would default to without any incentive to do something else, you're adding load to the town when it doesn't really help because town load is high already, so you're adding to existing peak loads. But with both time of day charging and with smart charging, you're adding load at night when the town load is low. And remember what I said, it's those conditions when the wind output is high, when the wind is honking, and the town load is low, that you're facing the limitations of the grid. So putting load when the town load is low is ideal. So comparing this to the power exports, the amount of power being shipped out on that line that I pointed out, we have the same corresponding three lines. This is the same 10% of EVs. You'll note the scale goes from 10 megawatts of import to 25 megawatts of export. The mustard color, which adds load in the afternoon, well, doesn't really help any that day. Doesn't really help any that day. Well, it might help a little bit that day. Time of day charging, where the load comes on at midnight, you see you are adding load right when you want to. You're bringing up that bottom peak. Perhaps I should make more explicit. The problem that we would be seeing here is when the export value drops down low, that's when it's pushing out energy. So the depth of this line is the problem, and the potential solution is adding load to bring that line back up. And with smart charging, you can see, because the smart charging is specifically targeting times of high exports, which is to say the line is being low, the smart charging, the pink line, draws that up very effectively at those times. Adds load. Okay, what's the punchline of that? If we look at all of our data, that was just looking at 2 days, so 2 days selected to be interesting to look at, but obviously not a broad representation of what's going on. This is an exceedance probability, which is to say, for any value you see on the x-axis, the curve shows the percent of the time that the daily peak export power exceeds that value. So how often does it exceed 20 megawatts? Well, it exceeds 20 megawatts about 8% of the time. How often does it exceed 22 megawatts? Well, it exceeds 22 megawatts about 4% of the time. If you add simple charging, you certainly see some reductions in exports down here, where the exports are 16, 18, 20 megawatts. But as you get up into the higher regions, the simple charging doesn't really contribute much. But the time of day charging in the red and the ideal smart charging in the green do. They pull those lines down. They pull down those times. They decrease the incidence of exporting a lot of power. Now I've blown up the very end of this curve. This is getting pretty nerdy over here. So down at the very extreme ends of this time, here we're exporting 26 megawatts, so that's really straining the system. With simple charging added, you're not really reducing that at all. With time of day charging, you're reducing most of a megawatt, half a megawatt, 3/4 of a megawatt. And with ideal smart charging, you're reducing 3 megawatts. So, and I should say that the ideal smart charging was designed as an ideal. It's not something that you're going to realize in the real world, but it relies on information gathering and communication and response, and all of those things are going to be imperfect in the real world. But the potential obviously is very great. Conclusions. Let's try to run through these. EVs are here. They're in the dealerships. Nissan Leaf. Chevy has a couple. Mitsubishi, Tesla, BMW. Porsche has one. Characteristics of electric vehicles: they're quiet, they're fast, they're low maintenance. You don't have to take them to gas stations. They sit and charge in your driveway. They're cheap to operate, but they have range limitations and they have high purchase price. Technical details: they're very efficient. They use 20% as much energy and 20% as much cost to travel. That lower energy consumption and lower energy cost gives them economic viability with about an 8-year payback. And they have lower emissions. They have 75% of the emissions of a gas car now, 50% of those emissions by 2020. Again, looking at the number of 10% EV penetration in Digby, the significant impact. You'd be saving 3.3 million liters of fuel a year. $4.5 million of fuel not bought in a year. There would be a new demand for electricity. That electricity would be 7,500 megawatt hours, or about $1 million worth. So you're saving $4.5 million, but you're spending $1 million on electricity. So for a net operating savings of $3.5 million. And if you have a little bit of intelligence, a little bit of control over when the charging load is applied, you free up capacity on the transmission system. Time of day rates or smart charging benefit the system. Dumb charging or simple charging, just the cell phone model, does not. So, recommendations. To educate the public, develop and disseminate some content. Let people in Digby know about the energy imports, exports, and use within the region, where energy comes from. Let people know that there are electric vehicles available, whether that's a ride and drive day. We have a few recommendations in the manuscript. And also let people know that the math works, that there is an economic benefit for vehicle users. The value proposition works. Yeah, so I say ride and drive day, get the word out there. I think dealers would probably be all over that. For a lot of these other recommendations, it involves lobbying and trying to get the coordination and buy-in from other groups. And to do that, find other jurisdictions within Nova Scotia that have similar constraints and concerns. Guysborough County, or the town of Guysborough, just put up Canso Wind. They are also on the tippy long end of a long distribution feeder. They're probably transmission limited too. I don't know their specific case in nearly as much detail as I do yours, but it's probably similar. Guysborough County, Sheet Harbor, Parsborough, Inverness, Sable Island. These are just some ideas. I haven't done extensive research in these other areas, but they might be facing similar concerns. Farther abroad, PEI. Well, PEI has a ton of wind and a limited link to the rest of the world. So they might very well also be involved. So, like I said, can't hurt to ask. And then what do you do with that team once you have a bunch of municipalities and other jurisdictions that have similar concerns? Charging infrastructure. One option that you could undertake by yourself would be a municipal real estate credit for charging station installation, for instance. If it costs maybe $2,000 to put in an EVSE, some provision in real estate tax might encourage that. Also, Halifax Regional Municipality used a great economic model to promote solar rooftop hot water systems, where they installed them for free and then recouped all those costs through real estate tax. So these are tools that are at your disposal, possibly. So the group of like-minded municipalities and other organizations could possibly lobby Efficiency Nova Scotia or Clean Foundation to aid in the installation of charging infrastructure. Other organizations within the government, Nova Scotia Department of Energy, Tourism, even Tesla Motors might be interested in installing a DC fast charger in the area. Tesla has been installing their own DC fast chargers all around the world at a ferocious rate. And now there are Teslas in Nova Scotia, so they might wish to support those. As an aside, if there could be DC fast charging, public transportation using electric vehicles would be a great application, as we talked about. Electric buses exist, and it's a great application where you have a known route, you have a known need for energy, you make lots of frequent stops. There's more detail on that in the report. I won't extend that too far. Electric vehicles themselves. The U.S., Quebec, BC all have purchase incentives on EV purchases. Nova Scotia could as well, especially in the context of not having domestic petroleum resources. The value of a tax credit for EV purchase could reflect the additional sales tax associated with the price premium, $12,000 price premium. There's additional sales tax being gathered. Some of that could be returned to purchasers. And it should also recognize the environmental benefits. In terms of charging strategies, we saw that the simple charging strategy is not of great benefit to the grid. Nova Scotia Power or the Department of Energy should be persuaded, should be encouraged to include electric vehicle charging in their time of use tariff, which are not currently eligible, or develop a separate time-dependent EV rate that encourages charging at night when, as we've seen, the value of discretionary charging really benefits the grid. And also participate and encourage smart grid activities in Nova Scotia. Smart grid to develop the smart charging algorithm. It's sort of a buzzword in energy circles. There hasn't been. Smart grid represents the communications tools necessary to implement smart charging and utilize more renewable energy. PowerShift Atlantic was a great example of a smart charging program that Nova Scotia Power demonstrated. Smart grid with domestic hot water heaters. Okay, I think that's it. That's it, okay. Woo, made it.
In regards to the charging stations at home, would they be similar units that you would have, like the town's got one down on the side of the building? Would it be similar to that?
Yep.
So when you're talking about the Solar City program HRM has, then it would be an incentive through and the homeowner could get one and then have it paid back through the property tax. Is that correct? Is that what you're referring to?
Well, there are a couple of possible different structures that you could have. These are the charging stations. They're referred to as EVSEs, electric vehicle supply equipment. You can buy them at Home Depot, at least in some Home Depots. I haven't seen them here, but to have one installed, to have it inspected, probably runs $2,500 ballpark.
Yeah.
A little more, a little less.
Did your house have to have like a 200 amp service, or what's the restrictions on like wiring one of those up to a house?
Great question. The restrictions wouldn't be any different from any other electrical appliance. If you're installing a heat pump or a gas range, it's the same considerations. It's simply a matter of counting amps through your panel and using appropriate safety factors. Do you, Lucas, have more you could add to that?
If you have a very old distribution panel in your house, and presently every breaker is filled in or fuses, you might run into a problem. It's probably not a bad time to upgrade your electrical system in your home anyway.
Yeah.
Other than that, the vast majority of homes that I've been in that have any recent 125 plus amp panels or 200 amp panels often have a tremendous degree of excess room in them. Furthermore, a lot of homeowners in Nova Scotia are opting now to remove baseboard electric heat and put in mini splits and things like that, which actually enables them to have additional capacity at their breaker panel that they didn't originally have, because people tend to be shifting away from resistance style heaters. So this is not a big issue for most homeowners.
Okay.
That being said, an old home system, it might be.
Yeah. Well, when
Your
you,
average electrician can make it.
okay. When you plug yours in when you go home, when it gets a full charge, does it cut off, or how's it? What's it do?
It's entirely controlled by the vehicle. The
Okay.
vehicle simply makes a demand, says, please charge me.
Mm.
And after, if I run to the corner store and back in about 5 minutes, it says, okay, I'm done. And if I've driven all over the city and around and so on and back and forth and plugged in, it'll charge for 2.5 hours or something. And it slows down at the end. It's a very easy load for Nova Scotia Power to accept, because it doesn't have a lot of harmonics in it. It doesn't have a bad power factor. These are terms that scare power engineers. It appears as essentially a pure resistive load, which is a nice load, and it tends to taper off at the end before it shuts off, so it's very controlled.
Some batteries, like with a cell phone, for example, they say like when you want to run your battery down almost to the end before you recharge it. Like, what about a car like that? Does it matter, or you can keep putting these little trickle charges in it every once in a while? Does it impact on the battery life?
That concern about running a battery down and bringing it back up, that was instigated by the technologies of the 90s.
Okay.
And with the advent of new battery technologies in the early 2000s and the carry forward of that, the management systems that are applied to them are really spectacular.
Okay.
And they carefully manage the energy within the cell, unbeknownst to the user at all, right? You have no idea what's going on. You just keep plugging in and it'll be fine. And those management strategies are superb.
Okay.
The end user knows no different. You plug in at will, at your whim, do what you want.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Is
David?
there a certain amount of, say, kilometers in a bus or a car that it really starts making sense that the premium price, it becomes negligible just because it's some simple amount of driving?
Yes. You've keyed on it beautifully.
You can't really necessarily put one number on it, but what you would want is something that is used continuously and used for a certain distance every day, and used a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So
Our bus is what,
They're
1 million kilometers?
they're called commuters.
commuters, yeah,
Or that-
absolutely.
You're looking for commuters. You don't want a vehicle that sits in the driveway all the time and, goes
Takes a couple
5,000 kilometers a year. That's not a good utilization of an electric vehicle right now, because the way you drive that good economics from an EV is by driving it a lot,
Yeah.
right? The operating costs are this big, the capital costs are this big. In a gas car, the capital costs are this big, but the operating costs are also this big. So the way you observe that differential and make gain from that margin is by driving it more. So it's good for people like Terry here, who drives in, what do you drive, 50 kilometers a day? From your house into here? 70, 60. Terry's a perfect applicant for an EV.
50 kilometers. I drive about 150 kilometers a week or a day. You probably figure out 1,000 a week.
Yeah, but he went one way, and then it's one way back. So when Terry says 65, he's talking 130.
Yeah, it's 35 and 35.
Oh, it's only 35,
That in
35.
itself is a great distance to come. You sound like you drive even farther. I bet you drive a lot or burn a lot of gasoline.
1,000 kilometers a month at least, or a week.
That's a lot of travel. You would benefit greatly from an electric vehicle
Well,
because
we're not
of
buying
the
you one.
increased efficiency.
Well, geez, you guys don't even photocopy sheets for me. I'm certainly not thinking about that.
So your question of whether it's a certain number of kilometers, if you drive 20,000 kilometers on 10 big trips a year, obviously you're a poor candidate. But if you drive 20,000 kilometers because you're driving 60 kilometers every single day, you're perfect.
You like it when people call you perfect.
I didn't understand the word. It's so long since I've heard it.
Never. He's never heard that word before. George, any questions? Maritza? It was an interesting presentation. it's that front up cost, you know. That's, for me, that's what it would be. I'd want the all-wheel drive, as I was telling Mr. Swan earlier,
What about the bus?
and I put on probably 50,000 clicks a year.
I think you'll find you'd be a very good candidate, and you'd find a simple payback considerably less than 8 years for yourself. So I encourage you to do those, to investigate. Maybe I can close with just a couple of words. It was real fun to undertake this study because we laid out for Nova Scotia some basic values that say, here's the energy that's used, and we found out across the board it's about a quarter, dependent on the vehicle, of a gasoline vehicle, depending on the type. And because of the pricing structure, it costs about a quarter to operate. And we've shown with general driving regimes that you will save money over the life of a car. If you drive more than average, which both of you tell me a lot more, you are exceptionally good candidates for this.
You know, the 60,000 miles, 3-year warranty, or whatever.
We blow right through it.
I'm out of it.
The second part is we've established quite clearly this saves greenhouse gas emissions in Nova Scotia, and there's a lot of people who question that. And that's very clearly laid out in this work. And then the third part is that can we plug in and use more renewable electricity from your grid here in Digby? Because that's important, I think, to you. Not only do we use our locally generated electricity instead of paying others for fossil fuels, but also can we increase the amount of renewable energy that we put on the grid here, meaning do more development of that? And the answer to both of those things is yes. It does require some buy-in from other parties such as Nova Scotia Power to establish a rate class and things, but I've seen Terry and Halifax just going wild on them. So you've got those opportunities, and I think we've established some basic criteria, basic layout of the land for EVs right now. And if you as a region take it up and say, look, this is really good for us, it's probably good for other locations in Nova Scotia as well, that would be of benefit to your constituents, because right now they look and they say, yes, it costs more, I don't know about that technology yet, and so on. It takes time. And you guys are leaders in this and can set the tone for them.
What would it cost you to power it up overnight every night? What would be an average cost at your house?
Usually
I mean, that's where it's...
$1.50 to $2. It's very cheap.
Oh, okay. I was thinking more like $10 a night or something.
Not at all.
Because you're thinking about gas.
That's right.
If it were the price of gas, it would be $10. The battery in his vehicle is 24 kilowatt hours. You arrive home with it not fully drained, maybe 15 kilowatt hours that you need. So 15 kilowatt hours, what do we pay? 16 cents? 16 cents per is
So you guys are thinking a pace for charge stations would be a good little kick.
So
what would be the best thing you can do tomorrow? Like easily something that would be easy to do in regards to what would be that first little step that wouldn't break the bank or might give you the best bang for buck as far as what we could do in regards to charge stations.
We're looking at 3 charging stations, David.
Pardon?
What is good for us is we're looking at 3.
Yeah,
I mean, we got turned down. Oh, at home.
Yeah.
people like incentive. And we tried to tailor our recommendations in this report to the municipality. So we weren't telling you do this pie in the sky project and it's going to cost you $10 million. We didn't want to say anything like that. So I think what you can do is you can give a small carrot to consumers right now and say, go get these vehicles, go buy them and start using them in your region. And you can do that with two small things. One is almost cost-free and the other is a small cost. The almost cost-free one is you can help by telling people of Digby that they're using their own renewable energy to drive their cars now. That's a powerful statement to people, that you're using your stuff right here. The second one, which costs something, but is a carrot you can give them, because you don't control provincial taxes and you don't control those things, is you can give them support on the installation of their home charging equipment. It's a small thing, but it's something that they feel like they're getting, and that's an incentive that will help drive sales.
Well, where I'm from, most people drive an extreme amount. It's a 120-kilometer round trip to Digby. 300 kilometers, more than that, to go to see a movie. So people do pound on the kilometers to just an amazing amount. I know people that drive over 100,000.
So the reason I think that perhaps you could economically justify contributing towards that charge station, because geez, it's $1,000. Let's say you gave away $1,000 or $1,500 to a homeowner that was buying an EV and installing a charge station. You go, geez, that's where are we going to get that $1,000 from? Recognize that although they have paid more in capital costs to get that vehicle, now they're not exporting those dollars for the fossil fuels to drive it, and that gives them more disposable income during the operating period to spend here.
It'd be nice to have an extra $4.5 million floating around in the district.
That's right.
Going off to that no thanks.
Okay, Deputy Warden.
We've been kind of looking at this, like, we've been looking at incentives for homeowners through electrothermal storage, and this fits in very, very well with that whole model, and it's something that I think that we could consider if we were to go forward with that. Like we've been talking to Claire, our neighbor in the town, and I see this as being a good incentive, maybe even more so than electrothermal storage units for some of the homeowners. Or at least it's an option where we can offer maybe more than one type of technology to the residents, so that because it is something that I think that has a lot of growth opportunities here, and like you said in the presentation earlier, what we're trying to do is get people to use more electricity, not less, because then we can put more into the grid, and we can do more projects, and we're very restricted on what we can do right now, and so it's a win-win for the residents and the municipalities.
Just a question, to use the time of day charge rate, the homeowner has to have the ability to store power, is that, so in order to
time-of-day
qualify for
rates,
that, the time of day rate, you need to have the ability to store, so they would have to find some.
No, you don't.
Oh, you don't?
No, I don't think so. I mean, because I have electrothermal storage unit in my house.
But your floor is considered the storage, isn't it?
To store the energy, but you power it. What would happen is there would be a timer. You plug your car in when you go home, but it wouldn't come on until 11 o'clock at night, and it would charge it up overnight, and at 7 o'clock in the morning it would shut off. So.
And the car is ready to do that today.
Right.
Every single one of these cars comes with a timer in it. The problem at the moment, you would work. You buy one, you'll get that. Do you have time of day rates on your home?
No.
You could not call Nova Scotia Power today and opt into that program
that's what I mean,
without
yeah.
having an ETS
Yeah.
or a in-floor heating or something. But that's where people like myself being in Halifax and Terry going to Halifax is a very good thing, because we continue to push
For
to
special
allow for
rates.
opt-in to those programs. Because not only is it the win-win you described, it also wins for Nova Scotia Power, because they're looking to increase load overnight for their for the whole power grid. So they'd like to see that.
So that's something, oh, sorry.
I think there's a lot of positive motion towards that right now, and I discuss with them about opportunities in the near future. But they continue to need to be pushed, and they need to hear from the various parties all around, and that's from both the individual civilian level, that's from the municipal level, and that's from the provincial.
So that's something the council could get behind as well, or even
Absolutely.
UNSM, and start lobbying for that special rate.
Terry?
And just on that note, Linda, those powers doing their IRP, their integrated resource planning, and submissions have to be in before too long on suggestions on, how to increase or what to do with the resource, or how to improve the resources. So we could maybe send in a letter commenting that this type of program would be beneficial not only to the province, if it was picked up by Nova Scotia Power and brought home or knocked in.
When's that due? You say soon?
Coming soon, I think December 13th or something.
I was going to say, it was sometime in December.
I can see that that would be one way to get the point across that part of the process.
Do we need a motion for that, or?
We'll discuss that after.
Earlier.
Mr. Swan?
Can I ask the council a question? Your tax base probably increased when the wind field went in place. Do you
Yes.
get any taxes from gasoline?
No. Yeah, well, yeah. How do you
Oh,
count
gas-
our
the
gas
gas-
tax?
Gas tax credit.
Federal gas tax fund.
So that does come back to you?
Yeah.
A little bit.
But that'd be the federal, it's not like Digby County spends this much on gas, and.
Yeah, it's a federal program.
Yeah, it's not,
So there is.
On how much consumption we have locally.
So the more wind turbines, you get more taxes. The more gas stays the same. So it seems to be more wind turbines, tidal, it's all good
Well,
for it.
we're all very interested in those sorts of things, and the big problem is the grid.
Yeah.
And finding a way to bump up that nighttime usage.
So getting more tax funds, I just know, talking to council, but you're all scrambling for money to do the programs. So you get a win-win here. You get renewables, you get electric cars that cost less to operate. It's more. So, anyway, that's what I thought. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Good point.
Anybody else? Jeff?
No, very good presentation.
Okay. This is not normal, but I'm going to make it normal.
Make an exception. You're going to make an exception.
Jonathan,
An exception?
do you have, no, I'm just going to make it normal. Do you have a question before they leave?
He'll call later.
He'll call you later, that's about it. Well then, on saying that, I would like to thank you both, all four. And we do appreciate your time in coming and giving us the presentation. We will be discussing, and we'll have to look at the December deadline and what it's on, because I know I saw it, but I thought we had sent something in on it already, but maybe we hadn't.
Just one more
Jimmy,
thank you
yes.
too, is to thank you guys for doing this work for us. I mean, it's the first in Nova Scotia, and I know there's going to be benefits for Nova Scotians, but I think it's great that you did it for us first.
Because we're the best. You can tweet that.
Green leaders, how's that? Strive to be green leaders, how's that?
No, we're the
Very
best.
much for the opportunity. I agree with you. This was important work for Nova Scotia. I hope you don't mind us telling it to other municipalities and so on as things go
And
along.
this is also going on our, Jeff, what is this going on?
It's on our
You-
website.
On our website, but,
On our website, the Intertube.
and it will be on YouTube, right? And it's on YouTube. So, and we do have, like, our MLA told me he goes through them because this is how he comes up with things he needs to call me about. We have,
He watches
and
you.
then I've had people call me and say they heard something because they were listening to it. They don't listen to it all. They said it gets long. But, it's a way for us to get out there, and it's a way for younger viewers. And if you want people driving electric cars, it's not the 70-year-olds. You're talking your 30-year-olds, your 40-year-olds, the ones who are doing a lot of driving. Like my daughter, it would be a waste of time. She does like 10 clicks a day. Because she lives in Kentville, drives, the minus of that.
150 a day would be,
But I'm just saying, it's good to get out there, so no, we appreciate what you're doing.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry, for setting this up.
drive safely.
We will.
Quietly and efficiently.
Carefully in the
Quietly and efficiently. I like that.
Enjoy your supper.
I see you wore your PhD
They're going to charge it while
uniform.
they're eating. They're going to charge while they're eating.
I'm also a recent dad, so I'm trying to balance the academic and the dad look.
Oh, excellent.
So what makes you say he's doing his PhD look?
Tweed coat.
Oh, I must ask my nephew if he has one. He's got his PhD.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy supper.
Thank you very much.
They're going to charge downtown. I don't
See,
know where they're going
you
down
got
there.
economic
Well, they're gonna charge
business.
that.
They're going to charge while they're having
They're going to charge downtown and eat downtown.
Good idea.
Well, I like that. That was
Um,
interesting.
Yes, very. Okay, our next, I'm just going to make a comment. Dangerous and unsightly, there's nothing there, but I hope that you all had the opportunity to look at the report done by Alfred. I thought it was, because that went to everybody, right? I read it.
Yeah, I got it.
I was going to say, sometimes I say stuff and everyone's looking at me, but it was very well done, and I'm just bringing it up here because I just thought it was an excellent spot to bring it up, because there's some good points in it. The next is the approval of the Committee of the Whole minutes of I'm sorry.
Just had a question about fake property. Wasn't that like
Fake property?
fake property and the unsightly and
That has, yeah,
cleaned up by us, right?
yes.
But didn't that go out to
it went by tender.
Or did he clean it up for us?
I can't answer that.
I just
don't
know
know
that-
what happened.
I talked to them, but Albert had said that Willis was going to be doing it.
Yes, and he didn't?
No, it's all done.
It's done, but it sounded like we did it.
Yes, we did.
We paid for it.
Okay. Yeah, it's now on her taxes.
Yeah, all right.
Jeff went
Okay. That's all right. Committee of the Whole minutes, November 10th, 2014. If there's no errors or admissions, could I have someone approve the minutes?
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Contrary minded? Motion carried. Any old business or business arising from those minutes? George? David?
No.
Maritza? Jimmy? Okay. The next is under new business.
New business.
Notice of intent, road name change, and what I want to ask, we still have to get 2/3 of the people to do this, right? It
In
looked
part
like
of
an
it,
or when I was reading it.
No, as part of the application process,
Mhm.
there has to be 2/3 of the people that live on the road. At this point, council can either move it forward to be looked at. They're not approving it. They can move it forward to the building department to look at it, or they can say right off the start, no, this is a non-starter and we won't be doing it. Now, the road, when we looked at it, the road is a lot bigger than what the person that made the submission, realized. Like, she thought there was only 1 or 2 people on it, but when you look at that's quite a long road. We were following it through, and there's a lot of households that sit on that are on that road, so it would affect, their civic address.
Civic numbering.
So there's
Have you counted how many there are? Because some of those might be cabins.
still civic numbers.
Okay, yeah.
That would be changed, so.
Jimmy?
Yeah, in regards to this, like, they want to bring it back to the original name. It'd be nice to know why the name got changed in the first place. Like,
She said during civic numbering.
but even during civic numbering, why would they have changed the name to a road? Is it because there was another road with that name?
No,
There's-
she included some history.
Yeah.
I know, but I didn't see where it
Yeah,
gave a
that's
reason
right.
why
I
did they
didn't
change it in the first place.
It just said
I
during
don't
civic
remember,
numbering.
myself, I don't remember any
Other-
reason. When I was growing up, it was always referred to as the Mallet Road.
Mhm.
And then after the civic numbering thing come in the 80s or whatever, there was a sign up, Gilbert's Cove Road.
Yeah.
My only question
So
is,
I don't know why it got changed or how it got changed myself.
I have no problem with it going on, but I feel that before we go the next step, whether it's the building department has to deal with this, but there has to be that petition so that we can see that 2/3 of the people want it.
But that was the next question I had is, like, if we say, okay, we're willing to see a survey done, whose responsibility is to do the survey?
That's
Is it
what I
ours?
wanna know.
Well, I think it's the applicant. The person that's making the application is responsible for contacting
They have to do, they have to go house to house
and determine whether people are willing to
And have people sign a
I
petition.
asked her when I called her, and I said, did you realize that? And she said she only spoke to one household.
And does it also refer to not just households, but also landowners? Like if there's a civic number tied to a piece of property, or because there's a lot of vacant land through there too. Does everybody have the ability to have a say as to the name of the road that owns land on that road?
I'd have to go back to the actual policy and the procedures there.
I
but-
thought it was civic numbering, the houses.
See, I'm not sure because I could remember when,
We had to remember we got Culloden Road changed.
right, and then there was work done on Bel Air Drive before years ago, and I didn't know when we did when the paving was done, you had to talk to the homeowner or the landowners of each property, and there was not necessarily wasn't going to be a house on that land at that time, but they owned the property. So I don't know. I'm asking the
And
question
I'm not
because
sure
I don't know.
either.
So, I mean, I don't have a problem with going forward with this if this is something the community's brought forward to us. And
But talking to one house, we need to
More
see
than that.
that survey.
Do you remember when the island's max MAX point, but locally it was MAC as an MAC for the guys that lived on the end? And what they talked to the Department of Transportation, but then someone just took a sticker of a C and put it break over. Don't put it that way.
No, that doesn't solve
We
it
can't
that
recommend
way.
that to her, too bad. Works so well.
George?
Is it the houses or the people living on the road or in the
Just no,
community?
in the policy, it indicates, a request to change the name of a road, street, or community will be considered only if, there's a few clauses, but property owners have been adequately informed and 2/3 majority or the greater of the area residents support the change as evidenced by a community survey.
So that area residence, does that mean the community or the road?
Property owners.
Property owners means
the
every
road.
piece of property.
Property owners on that road.
It doesn't have to be have a house on it.
But that road goes beyond, I think that map that
Road
she's,
goes back,
it goes, it's quite a ways, like she only indicated there, but it goes,
goes way back.
Picks up here,
and then
and
it
then
goes,
proceeds to go all the way back.
it goes way back to the.
Okay, but I thought it was only the yellow we were looking at.
That's all she highlighted, but if you look at the road,
But it goes back past.
But why wouldn't you do it as
You
two
couldn't.
roads like we did in Sandy Cove? We have Sandy Cove Road and we have Churchill Road.
well, that's one of the things in the policy that's discouraged, is having
Yeah.
one road with two names. Or
Well,
one-
there's a road between it and it split it up nicely in
I
Sandy
think
Cove.
that road goes right back past the road, it goes down to the dam.
It does.
It goes right around, and then there's a sharp corner that takes you to Dowsville, and it goes right to the corner
Yeah,
there.
it goes right back to the,
So it goes.
But the whole thing was known as Mallett's Road then? Or was part of it known as something
I
else?
can't tell you for sure, Linda. All I know is when we, Gilbert's Cove, when we went back that road, it was Mallet Road. I don't know where it stopped.
Okay, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
I'm wondering
I
if
had
it,
no idea.
on the other end it was known as Gilbert Cove Road.
I assumed it stopped with the four corners there.
Okay.
Back, but I guess it doesn't, you know.
I mean, if that's what, I mean, that's something that, we can have the building department explore and check with.
I make a motion that we have the building department look into this.
Do you want to, though, that, I think before they even look into it, I think the applicant should be,
They
go
have to
back
do
and
that.
get the 2/3 majority. So we
Okay, I'll
can,
make that one. Well,
if-
that doesn't have to be a motion then, does it?
well, I think that would be
Yeah.
part of it, that we would consider, the intent to change or investigate it if the applicant comes forward with it.
2/3.
Because if you've got area residents that aren't going to be interested in doing it, what's the point of having all that work and put into it?
We'll have to make sure she knows it goes all the way back. She just can't do two houses.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Contrary minded, motion carried. All right. The next is the Forest Products Association of Nova Scotia Sunday hunting. You all saw the letter. I'm going to hear what you all have to say because I think we all have different views on this. Jimmy?
Before I'd be comfortable in responding to making a motion in regards to this letter, whether support or not support, I would want to have more information as to why the province is even looking at this.
Because the rest of Canada does it.
Yeah, we're
Well,
one of the few
We're,
provinces.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
one other one.
And I mean, I'm already listening to the hunters asking why they can't have Sunday like everybody else. You can go to New Brunswick, they have Sunday hunting.
Well, the thing is, like there again, our council would have to decide whether we wanted to support blocking that or supporting the bill or whatever. And with only having one letter come in from one group, it would be kind of hard to make a fair decision on that. So I think until we had more information on this, it would be kind of hard to make a decision on this letter.
Maritza?
I guess we should have more information, but like I said earlier, that we're one of the few provinces that doesn't have Sunday hunting, so.
I'm actually for Sunday hunting. I'll be very
Yeah.
upfront right now.
David?
David?
Because it historically is something, it's a blue law, as in it's a law that's been done for religious reasons. I am very much in favor of there being Sunday hunting. Also, it's been, in Europe in particularly, for England, for Sunday hunting, it was a way because you got one day off, the working class a week, and at the Sunday was a way to keep those guys out. So the historical basis of this law makes no sense in modern day and age.
Yeah, I guess would be for the Sunday hunting, but I think we should hear.
Oh,
from
I would want to hear more
some of the
than
other
one
groups first
person.
before
kind of a
against,
strange
like
group.
myself.
Forest products?
But,
Oh, definitely,
yeah.
but I just wanted to hear
Yeah.
personal
Yeah.
opinions. I'm not saying.
Personally, I have no objection.
Yeah, I mean, if we had everyone come in here, I think we have to look at what the people are
Yeah.
saying, definitely. But I mean, it's, because I had hunters telling me they thought it was gonna be in this year, and we're so excited, because some people only get Saturday and Sunday off, and yes, they do wanna hunt, and my husband also cuts wood. And he tells me, he doesn't cut wood on Sunday because we got a church next door to us, he doesn't want the power saw going when they're at church. That's his choice.
Yeah.
But he said he'd like to go hunting, because that's not gonna bother anybody.
Sunday shopping was the same.
No trespass.
Yeah.
Sunday shopping.
Jimmy?
I'm not for or against it. I mean, I don't hunt. People that hunt, it's fine, but
I would want more information.
I'd want more information, because this letter is really addressing an issue, addressing landowners' rights as well. I mean, a lot of people go hunting in the woods. They don't own the land necessarily that they're hunting on. And I think this is where this is coming from, I think. So, but that's why I said earlier, I'd like to see more information
I
on
would
it before
too.
we'd ever make a decision.
So when you say more information,
We'd have to see other people come in.
I don't think we have to make a decision on whether we support this or not at this time.
so wait and see if there's other
Yep.
groups that come to it?
Right.
Uh-huh.
So there's no action really?
No action. Next? Is David?
I'm just not terribly, I think just for myself, I can't, I don't see what more information to do. I think it's fairly straightforward issue.
No, what we're saying come forward is, if we
You
have a
want more
whole
constituent-
lot of people coming for or against, then we have to make a decision as a council. Right now, as a council, we do not have to make a decision.
On one letter. I would definitely
I-
like to make a decision, of course, and if they get, then they get. I'm not in
But
favor of blue
but-
laws in any shape or
Yeah.
form.
But I don't think you would want to make that, I think,
Because
I
that
would
would
want,
consult-
I would actually personally want a lot more information of what's going on before a decision was made.
Well, can't
But-
they put up a no trespassing sign, the woodlot owners?
Yes. You
Yeah,
have to
they
put it
can.
every so many feet.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like going over.
No trespassing, no hunting. Or is it just no hunting?
Yes,
Yes, just no hunting.
Trespass, we already have a remedy, yeah, a sign. There's already a legal remedy available to them, so why would they be concerned with Joe Blow hunting wherever? That's just my own thought. And plus, the blue laws, it makes us look backward as a province, like no Sunday shopping, Sunday this, no Sunday that. It used to be a big whole host of these things.
Oh, yeah, Halifax, don't they still have one about horses have to be,
Tethered has to
on
be
a certain time? and
They're
that's
not
legal?
tethering their horses in Halifax.
I think that's still on the books, yeah.
In regards to this, though, I just want to say I talked to our MLA earlier today, because our MLA,
Oh, I thought you
and
said,
they're not even addressing this right at this time. It was something that they brought up when they were in opposition, but it's not. They don't even have a bill going through the House. The House isn't even sitting right now, so it's not even an issue right
I
now.
was wondering where that came from, because I hadn't heard anything
So-
provincially. I was wondering what,
well, it was being talked about before, because like I said, several hunters thought it was gonna come through this year.
Right, but it was because the present government had put a bill through the House, or they tried to put a bill through the House when they were in opposition, and it didn't go forward. But they haven't gone and put a bill through the House now that they are in government. Not to say they won't, but there hasn't been anything come forward yet. So it's not even an issue for us to have to respond to right now.
It's not our jurisdiction.
Okay, next is dumpsters on the island. You all read the letter from Andy. I would think the $2,000 would just go on our next year's budget.
Well, it's a year to year, and I don't know what the
Well, I
timing
thought it was in the spring before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was the spring when they first.
Yeah,
It originally started as a 6-month we did a $1,000 6 months, so I think what they're, looking for is that we certainly would continue doing it in the next fiscal year.
I do know that it's been very successful. There hasn't even been a scrap of anything in it that's not supposed to be in it, so that end has been resolved.
Yeah, he said
Yeah,
the
Kelly
gentleman.
Mine's been great.
So, as council, do we want to just put forward that this?
I'll move it to our budget process, but if it has to be something that we have to,
I think they want to know whether or not, because they may, like,
Okay, well-
time, like
It
our
might be past a
$1,000,
year
their
now.
1,000, we may have to give them $1,000 now, but it would.
okay,
might take a year
I'll
to
say,
do
I'll
it.
support, I'll move a motion that we support the initiative of dumpsters on the island.
Is there a seconder?
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Should I find out if they spent all their money or
No,
if they
no,
want
no,
to
no, no, no.
Of course,
That's-
that's
That's the CAO's
Okay,
job.
okay, sorry, Linda, Fraser. Jeez, Linda, you gave me, oh boy, I'm frightened now.
We're going to have to beat him, aren't
I love sticking my nose in things.
we? We love you for it, David, but,
Okay, I'm calming down on the whole doing
okay, all in
everyone
favor?
else's job.
Contrary minded, motion carried. The next is the Chief Administrative Officer's Report. As you see now, on December the 15th, there's a special council meeting at 6, bylaw and policy at 6:15. There's no meetings December 22nd, 29th, or January the 5th. Committee of the Whole on January the 12th, for Gregory and Adams, Joint RCMP Advisory Board in the town. January 19th, 5 o'clock, is Nova Scotia Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal. If you've got things that you're thinking about that you want to bring forward, please send them in to Pat. And, you know, I mean, I've already got 3 things I'm going to send on because they've been brought up to me now. So it's just easier to keep it on the books if you're thinking about it.
December 19th.
And it gives them something to look at in advance, that's all. On January 19th at 6, we have our bylaw policy. January the 20th is the Planning Advisory Committee. And then you have your CAO update. You had the department reports, and I've mentioned already one of them. We had our Committee of the Whole, council action items, capital projects. Any questions on any of the following? If not, our CAO, I went sort of through it all, but is there any questions on the CAO update?
Dan Harvey's report was very impressive. I enjoyed that. That came part of this, didn't it?
Under Department of Reports, is there any comment?
Well, you know what
Thank you, David. Thank you, David. Updates from previous action items were there. I don't think there was anything more we had to add on. And then our capital project, which I've already mentioned. If there's no further questions, we will go on to correspondence and information items. It was Municipal Affairs, summary of amendments to the Nova Scotia Building Code Regulations, Canadian Housing and Renewable Association, Municipality of Clare Doctor Recruitment Committee. We now have our new members been added onto that committee, which will be the warden, and if the warden is not available, Neil is the alternate. Claire.
Okay.
I'm sorry, no, it's Danny Hill.
No, it's
Danny
Danny
Hill,
Hill.
sorry.
For the Weymouth area.
Do we have a meeting date for the next one? Was it in January?
Well, I'm still waiting
No.
to hear from Claire when we were meeting in December.
Oh,
I'll send him I'll send Connie an email.
I thought we had a meeting for
About the,
January though. but maybe-
Yeah, because I'm thinking
We
that
weren't
should
having a meeting, but it was a Christmas, over the
Yeah.
Christmas, they were having a brunch or something for
with
the
the
students.
yeah.
I'll call Connie.
Okay, no, I have here February 10th. So,
Oh,
doctor recruitment, February 10th, 7
We
p.m.
might have
Wednesday.
set that at the last meeting.
Yeah.
okay. February
I
the
thought it was
10th.
January, but Steve said.
Okay. Gilbert's Cove December newsletter. The Mayor's and Warden's PVFC 15-16 budget. Bereavement Care Workshop, Pensions, Benefits, and Supplements, Merry Christmas from 14 Wing, Municipality of Clare, Weymouth Doctor Recruit Committee. And there is no in camera? Yes?
Just under correspondence, so
Yes.
I just want to make a comment. Under the PVSC budget, that they've presented.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be the 5th year they've come back with like no increases.
That was in there.
Yeah, the 5th year.
5.
Now, in saying that, there will be a small increase in the next year and the year after that. We've already discussed that at our board meetings, because they've cut and cut and cut, and they've put in programs to make the organization more efficient, but they can't cut anymore. I mean, they've got it down to the point where they don't have as many staff, they don't have as many offices. They've done just about everything they can do. They have people working from home. So, in saying that, I just wanted to let council know that there will be a small increase next year. They haven't even put up CPI over the last 5 years. They've absorbed all that as well. So they've kept the price locked in and frozen for 5 years. So that says a lot. I think it does anyway.
Yeah, it does. It does. If there is no further business, I thought this would be going a lot later than what it is. Would someone like to adjourn the meeting?
No, we got
Almost.
to talking inanely.
Is there a second? Or
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.